من وجهة نظر ديمقراطية أو جمهورية، فنرى أنه يقوم بالكثير من الأشياء التي تستدعي مسؤولية أمريكية، تحرك أمريكي لوقف هذه المخاطر. هل وصلت الإدارة الأمريكية اليوم، إدارة جو بايدن، إلى فعل ما يلزم لوقف هذه المخاطر؟
First of all, it's good to be back with you, and thanks for the question. Listen, the bottom line is this: the Biden administration has done the very minimal that they can do to support our allies like the UAE and like Israel and many other allies around the world. The UAE, after they were hit for a second or third time by the Houthi rebels, who, as you mentioned, are backed by the Iranian regime, the UAE made a statement calling for the State Department to put the Houthis back on the FTO list. For your viewers that might not know what the FTO list, that is the foreign terrorist organization list that's held by the State Department. Now, the Houthis were on the FTO list under President Trump. One of the first actions that President Biden's State Department took was removing them from the FTO list. Imagine that, removing terrorists from a terrorist list. And that was done to appease the Iranian regime. I mean, no one is a bigger funder of the Houthis than the Iranian regime. So it's been appeasement coming out of this administration from day one. And I don't think Biden and his team are not doing nearly enough to counter the malign influence of the Iranian regime, not just against the UAE, not just against Israel, but throughout the world.
نعم، ولكن إدارة الرئيس بايدن تقول أنها ترسل الحاملة المدمرة USS كول اليوم إلى مياه الخليج لمساعدة الحلفاء، تحديدا الإمارات والمملكة العربية السعودية، لمواجهة الحوثي. ألا يكفي هذا؟ كيف ترى هذا التحرك؟
I'll believe it when I see it. This administration has a tendency to speak out of both sides of their mouth. So I'll believe it when I see it, to be honest with you. The bottom line is it's too late. The Houthis have already sent multiple attacks into the UAE, multiple rocket attacks into the UAE. They have been attacking the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia for months now with hundreds of rockets. And where was the United States of America standing with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? I don't think they did a single thing to support them. So I think it's too late. And again, I'll believe it when I see it.
نيويورك تايمز كتبت مؤخرا في افتتاحية لها على إدارة بايدن أن تتوقف عن استرضاء إيران وتقديم التنازلات لها. الحزب الديمقراطي يقول: نحن نقدم بعض التنازلات لأن المسألة تحتاج قرار وموقف سياسي لكي يكون هناك توصل لاتفاق نووي جديد يقيد البرنامج النووي الإيراني، لأن الإدارة الديمقراطية ترى أنه أخطر عامل تصدره إيران اليوم. هل هذه التنازلات، هذه المواقف السياسية مثل ما تسميها إدارة بايدن، ستقود فعلا إلى اتفاق نووي مع إيران، اتفاق عادل يضمن تقييد البرنامج النووي الإيراني ويمنع إيران من الحصول على سلاح نووي؟
No, honestly, I don't think it is. The Iranian regime has shown America and any other country time and time again that when you're negotiating with them, they very rarely are negotiating in good faith. They'll ask for one carrot, we'll give a carrot in return, and then they'll say, hey, thank you so much for that carrot. We're going to keep that carrot, but can you give us 15 more carrots? This is just modus operandi for the way the Iranian regime operates, especially when it comes to negotiations. I personally believe that any type of diplomacy with the Iranian regime is going to fail. And also it has failed. It's failed over and over and over again. We're in our 9th or 10th, 11th round of Vienna Talks. I can't keep track of how many talks we're in. The bottom line is that the Iranian regime has never changed their tune since they took power in 1979. It's been death to America, death to Israel, while censoring, murdering, oppressing their own citizens, while, oh, by the way, funding terrorist proxies all throughout the world. Now, I've said it once and I'll say it again. It's my opinion that America, Israel, UAE, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries have been in a de facto state of war with the Iranian regime for years now. The Iranian regime is never going to directly attack one of these countries, but when they're funding Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, they wouldn't, the Houthis, the Hamas, Hezbollah, they wouldn't be able to do these things if they didn't have the support, financial support, operation, logistic support of the Iranian regime. So I think we have to start calling it what it is. At the end of the day, diplomacy with the world's leading sponsor of terrorism was destined to fail. It's going to continue to fail. And I think we have to pivot back to a maximum pressure campaign, isolate this regime as much as we can, and stand tall with our allies in the region.
نعم، ولكن براين اسمح لي، يعني من المفترض أن يكون ما توصلت له الولايات المتحدة والدول المفاوضة لإيران في فيينا أمر فيه نوع من العدالة، لأن واشنطن قدمت نوع من التنازلات لإيران قبل أن تذهب إلى الجولة الثامنة الأسبوع الماضي. هذه التنازلات تمثلت بإعفاءات على الدول التي ستتعامل مع البرنامج النووي الإيراني المدني، وهو كان واحد من بنود وشروط الاتفاق النووي لعام 2015. يعني إذا لم يكن هذا سبيل التوصل إلى اتفاقية تقيد قدرة إيران على الحصول على سلاح نووي، فما هو السبيل إذن؟ هل هناك من سبيل؟ يعني منسق شؤون الشرق الأوسط في مجلس الأمن القومي الأمريكي، وهو صاحب أعلى منصب في الأمن القومي الأمريكي للشرق الأوسط، يقول أن مسألة النووي الإيراني لا تدعه ينام الليل. فماذا نتوقع؟
I don't know how the United States of America thinks it makes any sense to lift these sanctions and put this waiver in place when 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, the State Department said that Iran is weeks away from having enough fission for an atomic bomb. So 2 weeks ago, they're very close to having an atomic bomb, and then 2 weeks later, they're lifting sanctions on that atomic program. It's the height of hypocrisy. It doesn't make any sense. And again, we've got to pivot back to that maximum pressure campaign. We have to get tough with the Iranian regime. That is the only language that they tend to understand. And I will say this about the Iranian regime. They are very good at exploiting weakness. And President Biden has been projecting weakness from the Oval Office from the moment he stepped into that office. And the Iranian regime has taken advantage of it. Our adversaries like China and like Russia have taken advantage of it because of our relinquishing of power on a world stage. This past summer, the Chinese and the Iranians did a $400 billion 25-year trade deal that will see China investing $400 billion into the Iranian regime. Now, listen, that wouldn't have happened if President Trump was still in office. And furthermore, I think a deal like that between China and Iran, I think it also we lose our leverage. America doesn't have any leverage anymore. They have 400 billion reasons from the Chinese to completely ignore us. So I don't think we have any leverage anymore. I think it's been, as you have seen, this current administration is begging the Iranian regime to get back into a deal. And again, we have to ask ourselves, how do the American people and how do our allies around the region benefit from giving more money to the Iranian regime? We know what they're going to do when we unfreeze assets. They're going to fund more terrorism and they're going to enrich their political elite. That's what they're going to do. This is their calling card. They've been doing this since 1979. So it doesn't make much sense to me in terms of why this administration is so interested in doing whatever they can to do a deal with this Iranian regime. It just really just doesn't make any sense to me.
هل نتوقع فوضى أكبر في المنطقة مع بداية تدفق المزيد من الأموال على إيران بما أن الإعفاءات بدأت ترفع وبدأنا نتوصل إلى نوع من التفاهمات مع إيران بحسب الإدارة الأمريكية؟
The short answer is yes, of course. If we're giving more money to an Iranian regime that has a track record of using that money to fund terrorist proxies all throughout the world while not doing anything to actually invest in the infrastructure of their country, then I think we know what's going to happen when we unfreeze assets and when we do certain things to support the Iranian regime. The Iranian regime, in addition to being the foremost sponsor of terrorism, they're also the foremost violator of human rights, from the gay and lesbian community to religious minorities to women. Women are kept out of the workforce in Iran. So again, why is the United States of America, why is President Biden doing everything they can to kind of realign the Middle East to make Iran this new superpower when they don't share any of our values as a country. They don't share our values. They're attacking our allies throughout the region, and they have the blood of Americans, Israelis, Saudis, and so many on their hands. It really just doesn't make any sense why this administration continues to do everything that they can. And one more point I'll make is, the Biden administration has flip-flopped quite a bit. They said, we're going to lift sanctions. We're not going to lift sanctions. They've been back and forth. Well, listen, the South Koreans just unfroze over $20 million of Iranian regime assets. And of course, they did that at the direction of President Biden. And what that money got the Iranians back into the UN, because the Iranians, they didn't pay their bills at the UN, so they weren't even a voting member at the UN. So what happened? South Korea unfreezes $20 million, sends it to the UN, and now Iran has a vote back at the UN again. The South Koreans would not have done that unless President Biden either directly asked them or blessed it. Again, that never would have happened on President Trump's watch. Again, got to be tough with this regime. That's the only language that I think they're ever going to understand.
وجهة نظر إدارة جو بايدن والحزب الديمقراطي عموما هي أنه يقول نحن لا نريد أن نتساهل مع إيران، نحن لسنا أكثر تساهلا مع إيران من الحزب الجمهوري، ولكن وجهة النظر عند الديمقراطيين هي أنه إذا كان الآن من الصعب الحديث مع إيران عن برنامجها الصاروخي وتسليحها للحوثي ودعمها لحزب الله وكل هذه الملفات، وإيران حتى الآن ليست دولة نووية، فكيف سيكون الوضع إذا تحولت إيران إلى دولة نووية؟ الحزب الديمقراطي يقول إيران ستبتز المجتمع الدولي، لن تقبل بالتنازل عن أي ملف آخر من هذه الملفات التي تعتبرها واشنطن اليوم ثانوية إذا تحولت إيران إلى دولة نووية. لذلك من الأولوية الآن أن نقيد برنامج إيران النووي، ثم حين نضمن أن إيران لن تكون دولة نووية تبتز المجتمع الدولي بسلاحها النووي، دعونا نتحدث معها عن الحوثي وعن البرنامج الصاروخي وكل هذه الأمور. فما الذي سيحدث برأيك في المستقبل المنظور إذا كانت هذه هي رؤية الحزب الديمقراطي؟
I think they're the same thing, right? I mean, they're the same thing. The Iranian regime, they've doubled down, they've tripled down, in terms of their support for their terrorist proxies and their malign activities in the region, and no one's holding them accountable. Why is no one holding this regime accountable for their vast human rights abuses that are happening inside of the country, for their sponsorship of terrorist groups that have been attacking Americans and our allies for years? It really just doesn't make any sense, why President Biden wants to do so much to be in a good relationship with the Iranian regime. I want President Biden to offer some words of support for the Iranian people. Why is he always trying to support the Iranian regime? The regime has shown us time and time again what they will do if we unfreeze assets and do things to help them. They're going to fund more terrorist proxies. They're going to continue to censor, oppress, and murder their own citizens for speaking out. Listen, the Islamic Republic of Iran, outside of the political elite, it's not a good life. I mean, there's so much poverty, there's so much despair. The Iranian people deserve the support of the American people and of our leaders in government. And I don't think I've once heard President Biden, since he took office, said a single word of support of the Iranian people as there's been protests for water shortages, for human rights violations. He hasn't said a single word. And furthermore, President Biden didn't say a single word, nor did Secretary Blinken or anyone in the State Department, when just 2 weeks ago, the Islamic Republic of Iran was the only country in the United Nations to vote no against a bill, a resolution condemning Holocaust denial. So all of the things I've said, human rights violations, sponsorship of terrorism, murdering, censoring, and oppressing their own people, and oh, by the way, they deny the Holocaust happened. This is the country that President Biden and his administration are so interested in having diplomacy with. It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't.
شكرا لك براين.
Of course, thank you so much.
وفي الختام شكرا لكل متابعي قناة عدن المستقلة وبرنامج من واشنطن. كنت معكم أنا هديل عويس من العاصمة الأمريكية. ألقاكم في حلقة جديدة الأسبوع المقبل. إلى اللقاء.